Today we're talking about how they're trying to feed us 3 million pages of empty text just so we don't notice the main point. Everyone was waiting for videos from the basements, but the real nightmare is hidden in flight logs and bank statements. This list is a verdict. The Department of Justice dumped a massive amount of data but held back another 2.5 million pages that are still considered too dangerous to publish. Archives reveal that Bill Clinton flew to the island at least 5 times without Secret Service protection. That is a direct breach of national security. The compromat on Gates is even deeper. Epstein kept a detailed diary of his medical secrets and affairs with Russian students to blackmail him for years. And in February 2026, Prince Andrew was arrested not for dirty dancing, but for leaking secret British trade reports on Afghanistan to Epstein. We are not looking at a sex scandal, we are looking at how a financial manipulator turned the global elite into his puppets. If this isn't hardcore, then I don't know what is.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We live in an era where we are just constantly drowning in information. Every single day you wake up and you're just bombarded.
Oh, absolutely. It is completely deafening.
Right. You've got headlines screaming at you, carefully crafted PR statements, spin from political operatives, and this endless noise on social media.
And it can feel completely overwhelming to figure out what is actually true.
Yeah, exactly. But every once in a while, an event happens that just slices right through all of that noise, an event that provides the ultimate test of transparency. And that is exactly what we are looking at today with the fallout from the 2026 Epstein Files Transparency Act release.
It truly is a watershed moment, not just for journalism, but for the historical record itself. We are looking at a release of government data that fundamentally alters our understanding of how modern power structures operate behind closed doors.
I'm going to take a second to really frame the sheer mind-boggling scale of what we are dealing with today.
Yeah.
Because this isn't just a leaked folder of emails.
No, not at all.
The U.S. Department of Justice was compelled to release an absolutely staggering archive. We are talking about 3.5 million pages of documents.
Plus 2,000 videos.
Right. Plus 180,000 images. It is a monumental data dump that covers decades of Jeffrey Epstein's private, highly guarded networks.
And when you are handed an archive of that magnitude, 3.5 million pages, the absolute worst thing you can do is rely on a 5-minute summary from a cable news anchor.
Exactly.
You have to get into the weeds. You have to look at the primary sources yourself.
Which brings us to our mission for this deep dive. You and I, along with you listening, are going to step into the shoes of open source intelligence analysts.
OSINT analysts.
Right, OSINT analysts.
Yeah.
And anti-human trafficking investigators.
Yeah.
We are going to strip away the sensationalism, the media spin, and the outrage cycle. Our goal is to build a hard-hitting connection matrix.
And we are going to be rigorous, no fluff, just facts based entirely on the sources.
Exactly. We're going to focus exclusively on the raw data.
And in the world of intelligence analysis, a connection matrix is incredibly straightforward. You strip out the emotion, and you look at the mechanics. We want to know exactly who these public figures were.
The politicians, the businessmen, the celebrities.
Right. We want to know the context of their contact. Was it a business meeting? A flight on the Lolita Express? A visit to Little St. James? Or just personal correspondence?
And we want the pure logistics. Give me the flight numbers, the dates, the geographic locations, the number of companions, and most importantly, we are going to look at the glaring, undeniable contradictions.
The gap between what these powerful people told the public and what the data actually proves they were doing.
If we were building a literal spreadsheet right now, the columns would be, well, they'd be name, type of contact, logistics, and the exact source document. Nothing else.
So that is the only way to navigate an archive like this. You follow the paper trail, because a flight manifest doesn't care about a politician's approval rating.
No, it doesn't.
And a signed legal contract doesn't care about a CEO's stock price.
Exactly. Now, before we start pulling names from this archive, there is a mandatory non-negotiable disclaimer that we need to state clearly for you, the listener.
Yes, this is crucial.
The sources we are analyzing today contain incredibly charged allegations. These files involve monumental figures on both the political left and the political right. The documents name former presidents, including Bill Clinton and Donald Trump. We need to firmly state right now that we are not taking sides.
We are not endorsing any political faction.
Right. And furthermore, we are not endorsing or validating the unverified tips contained within these FBI files.
Because in a 3.5 million page release, you are going to find a lot of raw intelligence, including hotline calls that were never proven.
Right. Our job today is strictly and impartially to report the raw data contained in the DOJ's release. We are here to convey the exact contents of the source material to you. We aren't here to play judge and jury. We are just reading the data.
The data is entirely neutral. So where should we begin our analysis?
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start at the very top of the political food chain. We are going to heavily scrutinize the logistics of their movements and the public contradictions they've created. Let's look at the documents surrounding former President Bill Clinton.
The newly released files give us an incredibly granular picture of the 1990s and early 2000s. And when we talk about logistics, the first thing that jumps out from the archive are the visitor logs from the executive branch.
The White House logs?
Yes. The documents show that Jeffrey Epstein visited the White House between 17 and 21 times from 1993 to 1995.
Let's pause on that. Because 17 to 21 visits in a 2-year span is not a casual frequency. How does someone get cleared into the White House that many times? The files mention a specific aid, don't they?
They do. The WAVES records, which are the Worker and Visitor Entry System logs, show that these weren't just public tours. Many of these visits were facilitated by a specific White House aide named Mark Middleton.
So this granted Epstein access to the highest levels of the executive branch.
Exactly. He wasn't just dropping by. He was being actively hosted by the administration's inner circle during the early years of the Clinton presidency.
But the data really shifts into high gear when we move out of the 1990s and into the early 2000s, specifically looking at the aviation logs. We are talking about Epstein's private jet, the Boeing 727-100, tail number N908JE.
Infamously referred to in the press as the Lolita Express.
Right. What do the actual flight manifests tell us about Clinton's movements?
The manifests show a massive logistical footprint. Bill Clinton took 26 flights on that specific aircraft between 2002 and 2003.
26 flights.
And these weren't just quick hops up the East Coast. The destinations in the logs include extensive international travel to Asia, Africa, and Europe.
Okay, 26 international flights.
Correct.
But as an analyst looking at this, there is a massive logistical anomaly that jumps right off the page regarding those flights.
Security details.
Yes. Former presidents have lifelong Secret Service protection. But the data shows that on at least 5 of these flights, the Secret Service detail was apparently missing. How is that even possible?
It is a profound deviation from standard security protocols. The Secret Service is meticulously documented. They fly with the protectee, they log their movements, they coordinate with local authorities abroad.
Right.
So for a former U.S. president to travel internationally without a detail logged on the manifest indicates a level of deliberate privacy. Or off-the-books travel, it is highly, highly unusual. It suggests a desire to travel without the standard government apparatus watching and recording every move.
And the OSINT data doesn't just stop at dry flight logs. The 2026 archive includes verified visual evidence that backs up these international manifests. We have verified photos from a specific trip to Asia in November of 2003.
The visual intelligence is striking. These images place Bill Clinton, Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and interestingly, Mick Jagger together at the China Club.
For those who don't know, the China Club was this incredibly exclusive, high-end private members club in Hong Kong. It's the kind of place where global elites gather behind closed doors.
Exactly. And the photos don't stop there. There are also verified images of Clinton at a Rolling Stones concert at the Tamar site for the Harbor Festival, which took place on November 7th, 2003.
And Epstein was there.
Backstage photos show that Epstein was right there in attendance. So you have the flight logs proving the travel and the photographic evidence proving the social proximity during that travel.
So this is where we build out that contradiction we talked about for our matrix.
Yeah.
We take all this logistical and visual data, the 21 White House visits, the 26 flights, the photos in Hong Kong, and we compare it to the public statements made years later.
The gap between the PR and the data is vast. In 2019, as the Epstein scandal was reaching a boiling point, Clinton's office released a very definitive statement. They claimed he knew nothing of Epstein's terrible crimes.
Right.
They insisted he had a very limited relationship with him, and they categorically stated he had never visited Epstein's private island, Little St. James.
A limited relationship, but then the DOJ releases Epstein's 50th birthday book.
Yeah.
This was a bound collection compiled by Ghislaine Maxwell back in 2003, filled with notes from his inner circle. And the DOJ released an image of a handwritten note inside this book. The Wall Street Journal analyzed it and described it as Clinton's distinctive scrawl. What did that note actually say?
The note praises Epstein in highly personal terms. It highlights his, quote, childlike curiosity, his drive to make a difference, and praises the solace of friends.
Childlike curiosity and the solace of friends. You do not write that kind of deeply affectionate philosophical note for a guy you have a limited relationship with.
You don't. It denotes a deep personal familiarity. It is the language of a close confidant, not a distant political acquaintance. And this is the power of releasing 3.5 million pages of primary source documents. You cannot spin a handwritten note and 26 flight manifests.
The political calculus completely shifted after this release. It forced his hand, didn't it?
Completely. In February 2026, after initially refusing and facing the very real threat of contempt of Congress, Bill Clinton officially agreed to testify before a House committee regarding his ties to Epstein.
He testified behind closed doors and reportedly maintained his stance that he saw nothing and did nothing wrong. But the historical takeaway here is that a former president was compelled to sit down and testify solely because the raw data contradicted the PR narrative.
That is the essence of why we do this analysis.
Yeah.
Now let's pivot and look at the other major political heavyweight in the files. Let's look at the documents concerning Donald Trump.
Let's run the exact same process. What do the logistics tell us about Donald Trump's movements? We go back to the flight manifest for that same Boeing 727-100.
The logs show that Trump flew on Epstein's jet at least 8 times between 1993 and 1996. So we're looking at an earlier timeline here, heavily concentrated in the mid-1990s.
And these weren't always crowded party flights, right?
No. One particular manifest from 1993 lists only 2 passengers on the entire aircraft, Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein, just the 2 of them.
Wow.
Another flight log from that era shows Trump on a flight that included Ghislaine Maxwell and an unidentified 20-year-old.
So the logistics show a very clear, intimate physical proximity during the 1990s. But the files also give us communications data that paints a really interesting picture of how that relationship evolved, or rather, devolved.
Yes.
Let's look at the FBI interview summaries. Specifically, there's a 4-page summary of an October 2019 FBI interview with a former Palm Beach police chief named Michael Reiter.
This is a fascinating piece of documentation. FBI 302 forms, which is what these interview summaries are called, capture what witnesses tell federal agents. Reiter was discussing an early, localized investigation into Epstein that took place in the 2000s. According to the document, Reiter stated that Trump actually called him around 2006.
And what did Trump allegedly say on that call?
According to Reiter's account to the FBI, Trump said, quote, "Thank goodness you're stopping him. Everyone has known he's been doing this." Trump also reportedly encouraged the police chief to focus on Ghislaine Maxwell, calling her evil, and claimed during that call that he had permanently kicked Epstein out of his Mar-a-Lago club.
It's a fascinating pivot. You have the flight logs from the 90s showing them flying alone together, and then by 2006, you have Trump allegedly calling the local police chief to cheer on the investigation and distance himself.
It illustrates a deliberate attempt to align with law enforcement after their relationship had fractured. Trump has consistently maintained that he and Epstein had a massive falling out around 2004, and this 2006 phone call, if accurate, certainly supports the idea that they were enemies by that point.
Right.
However, as comprehensive analysts, we also have to address the unverified tip line data that was included in the 2026 DOJ release.
Yes, and this is where we have to be incredibly precise and responsible with how we interpret government files. The January 30, 2026 release included a massive spreadsheet of unsubstantiated tips from an FBI hotline. These are people calling in with claims that the FBI recorded.
Right, and one specific 2019 FBI document contains a tip from a purported male victim. This caller accused both former Presidents George W. Bush and Bill Clinton of assaulting him on a yacht cruise in the year 2000.
And Trump was mentioned too.
Yes. The caller claimed that Donald Trump and Melania Trump were present on this yacht. Furthermore, the tipster alleged that they witnessed ritualistic sacrifices.
Okay, I think we need to stop and talk about how analysts handle a document like that. Because when a file says ritualistic sacrifices and names 3 presidents, the internet tends to lose its mind.
And that is exactly why the golden rule of this kind of intelligence gathering is so crucial. Unverified tips are just tips. They are not proven facts.
Anyone can call a hotline.
Anyone. In fact, if you look at the actual FBI document, there is an explicit note from federal authorities stating that absolutely no evidence was provided by the alleged victim to verify these extreme claims.
So why do we even mention it? Why did the DOJ release it?
We discuss it, and the DOJ released it because it is part of the permanent historical record of the investigation. When you enact a Transparency Act, you release the files, the good, the bad, and the unsubstantiated. Our job isn't to pretend the document doesn't exist. Our job is to accurately report that the government received the tip, investigated it, and found zero evidence to support it.
Perfectly stated. We report the data, we don't invent the truth. But let's bring it back to the contradiction in Trump's public narrative for our matrix. His spokespeople, even as late as 2026, have stated that he cut off the relationship, threw Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago, and was entirely transparent about their fallout.
The fallout in 2004 appears genuine based on the documents. But the contradiction lies in how the 1990s are framed. The historical flight logs, the photos of them socializing at Epstein's New York mansion, and files mentioning an incident where Epstein introduced Trump to a 14-year-old girl at Mar-a-Lago before Epstein was allegedly banned, all paint a picture of a very deep, integrated social proximity that lasted for over a decade.
It wasn't a passing acquaintance.
No, they ran in the exact same tight-knit Palm Beach circles for years.
So if we synthesize this first section looking at the politicians, what is the ultimate takeaway?
The overarching theme is that highly paid public relations teams can craft any narrative they want today. They can say their boss had a limited role or that they saw nothing, but they cannot erase the flight manifests from 1993 or the Waves visitor logs from the White House or the photographic evidence from a club in Hong Kong. The raw data remembers everything.
The raw data remembers everything. That is such a powerful thought, and it bridges us perfectly into Section 2 of our deep dive. Because politicians are used to spinning the truth. But what happens when we point this analytical lens at the corporate world?
The business elite.
Exactly. We're going to shift away from the politicians and look at the business, Wall Street, and tech elite.
The corporate sphere is incredibly vulnerable to this type of data analysis. Unlike politicians who operate in social circles, business leaders leave rigid, undeniable paper trails. We are talking about signed contracts, corporate entity filings, wire transfers, and timestamped server emails.
Let's look at Howard Lutnick. For context, Howard Lutnick was the U.S. Commerce Secretary under Donald Trump, and he is the incredibly high-profile CEO in the financial firm Cantor Fitzgerald. What do the emails from 2012 show us about his relationship with Epstein?
The timeline here is critical. The date is December 19th, 2012. Lutnick emails Epstein directly. He explains that he and his family are currently on a boat in the Caribbean. Lutnick writes, "Where are you located? What is exact location for my captain? Does Sunday evening for dinner sound good?"
So a billionaire CEO is asking for naval coordinates to bring his family to Epstein. How does Epstein's camp reply?
An unidentified recipient replies on behalf of Epstein, providing the exact logistics. They write, "Come Sat or Sunday lunch. Littlest James on the map, behind Crispin's Cove."
Little St. James. That is the infamous private island. And the data confirms that this visit actually took place, doesn't it?
It does. On December 24th, 2012, Christmas Eve, Epstein's assistant emails Lutnick on behalf of Epstein, simply saying, "Nice seeing you." Lutnick's assistant replies, "Will do," and forwards that message directly to Lutnick.
So we have a confirmed time-stamped event. Lutnick, his wife, and their 4 children had lunch on Epstein's private island on Christmas Eve in 2012. Now, keep that date in your head, December 24, 2012. Let's cross-reference that social visit with the corporate data. What happens 4 days later?
What's fascinating here is that 4 days later, on December 28, 2012, a formal legal contract is executed for an advertising technology company called Adfin.
And who are the signatories on that contract?
The DOJ released the actual PDF of the contract. Howard Lutnick signed the document on behalf of a limited liability company called CVAFHI.
Okay.
Jeffrey Epstein signed the very same contract on behalf of his entity, the Southern Trust Company. Their physical signatures appear on neighboring pages. They were actively acquiring financial stakes in this ad tech company simultaneously, executing a complex corporate deal during the holiday week.
This is where public relations statements go to die. Because before this 2026 release, Howard Lutnick's team crafted a very specific narrative. They publicly claimed that he spent, quote, zero time with Epstein. They said Epstein was just a neighbor in New York, and that Lutnick completely cut ties with him way back in 2005. The U.S. Commerce Department even put out an official statement insisting he had limited interactions.
Let's just look at the absurdity of that defense against the data. You cannot claim you spent zero time with a man and that you cut ties in 2005 when there are time-stamped emails proving you brought your wife and 4 children to his private island for Christmas Eve lunch in 2012.
Right.
And you certainly cannot claim limited interactions when you are co-signing corporate investment contracts with him 4 days later.
The DOJ even restored a previously deleted photograph, didn't they?
Yes. Digital forensics recovered a photo of Lutnick wearing a blue shirt, standing shoulder to shoulder with Epstein on the island itself. When you combine the emails, the physical contract signatures, and the recovered photograph, his public timeline is completely obliterated.
The fallout was immediate. Once these documents hit the public in February 2026, members of Congress aggressively demanded his resignation.
It's astounding how a single PDF of a contract and a few server timestamps can dismantle a carefully built reputation. But Lutnick wasn't the only tech and finance titan caught in this web. If we look toward Silicon Valley, the files concerning Elon Musk show a completely different but equally revealing kind of interaction.
With Elon Musk, the corporate contracts aren't the focus. Instead, we are looking at incredibly candid communications data. The email archives from late 2012 show Musk and Epstein communicating directly about social events and party logistics.
Let's look at the specific dates. November 25, 2012. Epstein emails Musk asking how many people he plans to bring for a helicopter ride over to the island. Musk replies, "Probably just Tallulah and me." He's referring to his wife at the time, Tallulah Riley. But then Musk asks a highly specific, revealing question. He asks, "What day night will be the wildest party on your island?"
The wildest party.
And the correspondence doesn't stop there. Exactly 1 month later, on Christmas Day 2012, Musk sends another email to Epstein. He writes a fairly lengthy message. He says, "Do you have any parties planned? I've been working to the edge of sanity this year, and so once my kids head home after Christmas, I really want to hit the party scene in St. Bart's or elsewhere and let loose. The invitation is much appreciated, but a peaceful island experience is the opposite of what I'm looking for."
It's wild to read these emails. Epstein actually replies to that, saying he understands why Musk is turning down the peaceful invitation to Little St. James. But then Epstein adds this incredibly bizarre, coded comment. He says that the ratio on my island might make Musk's female companion uncomfortable.
Given what we know about the trafficking operation, the ratio of young women to men on that island is a deeply chilling phrase.
Absolutely chilling. And despite that, a few days later, Musk emails back, inviting Epstein to join him for drinks in St. Bart's. The archives show further emails in 2013 and 2014 about meeting up for the holidays, with Epstein's assistant even noting that Musk was explicitly scheduled to go to the island on December 6, 2014.
So we have the timeline of coordination. Now let's look at the public defense for the contradiction matrix. In 2025, Elon Musk posted on his platform, X, categorically stating, quote, "Epstein tried to get me to go to his island, and I refused."
In all caps.
Right. After the 2026 DOJ document dump, he posted again, insisting he had very little correspondence with the man and had declined repeated invitations.
And technically, the emails do show him declining a specific invitation because it was too peaceful.
Yeah.
But the OSINT data shatters the implication of his public defense. The tweet implies a moral refusal, and I stayed away from that guy narrative.
Yep, exactly.
But the private emails show a highly familiar tone. He is actively inquiring about the party schedules, asking when the wildest party was, and coordinating drinks at exclusive holiday spots.
The public claim of total refusal is heavily contradicted by a private eagerness to socialize, provided the environment was wild enough. And we have to remember the context of the timeline here. This is late 2012. This is 4 full years after Jeffrey Epstein pleaded guilty and was convicted of soliciting a minor.
It was public knowledge.
It was, yet one of the most powerful tech CEOs in the world was casually discussing party logistics with him.
It really highlights the bubble these guys live in. Which brings us to a dual profile on the files. Thomas Pritzker, the chairman of Hyatt Hotels, and Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates.
Let's start with Thomas Pritzker. His presence in the files is quite prominent. He was actually labeled numero uno in Epstein's infamous little black book by one of the house managers.
Numero uno. What do the flight logs tell us about Pritzker?
The logs show that on December 7, 2000, Pritzker flew from London to the Marham Royal Air Force Base in the UK. And look at the passenger manifest. He was flying with Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and a passenger identified only as one female.
And why RAF Marham?
They were flying to a Royal Air Force Base because they were being hosted by Prince Andrew at Sandringham House.
It's just an incredible collision of wealth and royalty. But it was the later emails that really caused Pritzker's downfall, right?
Yes. In an email thread from 2016 again, long after Epstein was a convicted offender, Epstein wrote to former Harvard president Larry Summers about setting up meetings. Epstein wrote, "Barrick and the boys in PB, wild, wild. PB standing for Palm Beach."
Wild, wild.
Combine that with the fact that Virginia Giuffre, one of the most prominent accusers, testified in a 2016 deposition that she believes she had an encounter with Tom Pritzker, and the pressure became insurmountable. Following the release of these emails in February 2026, Pritzker officially stepped down from the Hyatt board, issuing a statement that he deeply regretted his association with Epstein.
So Pritzker's story is about social complicity. But when we look at the documents concerning Bill Gates, the narrative takes a really dark turn into the mechanics of intelligence and extortion. We are looking at draft emails from 2013 that Epstein wrote and sent to himself. What exactly was in these drafts?
These draft emails are some of the most revealing documents in the entire 3.5 million page archive because they show us how Epstein operated. In these 2013 drafts, Epstein meticulously documented an alleged affair that Bill Gates had with a Russian bridge player named Mila Antonova.
How did Gates even know a Russian bridge player?
Gates is an avid bridge player, and he met Antonova around 2010 through the tournament circuit. Epstein later met Antonova and actually paid for her to attend a software coding boot camp. But the emails go far beyond just noting the affair. Epstein's drafts meticulously documented Gates's alleged fears of having contracted a sexually transmitted infection from the encounter, noting that Gates required antibiotics.
Let's just stop and think about that for a second. Why on earth would a billionaire financier sit at his computer, write down highly sensitive medical and personal secrets about the founder of Microsoft, and email them to himself?
As an analyst looking at the mechanics of intelligence operations, this is textbook preparation for compromat.
Explain compromat for the listener.
Compromat is a Russian intelligence term for compromising material. It is the practice of collecting damaging information on a politician, a business leader, or a public figure, not to expose them immediately, but to hold it over them. It's leverage. It is a slow, methodical build of blackmail.
And we know Epstein tried to use this leverage, didn't he?
Yes. The Wall Street Journal had previously reported that Epstein actively tried to threaten Gates in 2017 after discovering this affair. Epstein was reportedly frustrated that Gates was pulling away from their shared philanthropic ventures, which Epstein desperately needed to legitimize his reputation. By documenting the affair and the STI fears in a timestamp draft in 2013, Epstein was essentially building a leverage file.
It really changes how you view Epstein. He wasn't just this weird guy who liked to network with billionaires. He actively, maliciously collected their darkest secrets to weaponize those secrets for control.
Precisely. Gates's representatives naturally called the claims absurd and completely false, referring to Epstein as a disgruntled liar trying to entrap and defame him. But whether the affair happened exactly as Epstein wrote it or not almost misses the point.
Right, the data shows the intent.
The point is the predatory nature of the operation. Epstein's social circle wasn't a group of friends. It was a carefully constructed web of mutual vulnerability and blackmail.
And as we are about to see, that web of blackmail didn't stop at the borders of American business. It reached across the Atlantic and penetrated the highest echelons of global statecraft. Which brings us to Section 3 of our analysis: global royalty, diplomacy, and academia.
This is where the story shifts from corporate PR disasters to actual national security threats. Let's look at the data surrounding Prince Andrew, who is now officially referred to in the UK as Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor.
The public has known for years that Andrew and Epstein were close. There was the infamous BBC Newsnight interview. But the 2026 files reveal the operational day-to-day depth of their relationship. Look at the emails from August 2010. Remember the timeline here. This is 2 years after Epstein went to jail for soliciting a minor.
The casualness of the exchange is staggering. Epstein emails Andrew to set up a dinner, and in the email, Epstein writes, quote, "She 26, Russian, clever, beautiful, trustworthy, and yes, she has your email."
And how does a senior member of the British royal family reply to a convicted sex offender offering him a 26-year-old Russian woman?
Andrew simply replies with a single letter.
A.
Just A.
Just A.
That exchange alone proves a continued, active procurement relationship well past Epstein's conviction. But the data reveals something much more dangerous than just social procurement. It reveals a severe breach of national security. We have to remember that at this time, Prince Andrew was serving as a UK Special Representative for International Trade and Investment. He had access to highly sensitive government intelligence, and the emails show that Andrew was actively sharing confidential investment briefs with Epstein.
Let's get specific on what he shared. The files show Andrew sent Epstein a confidential brief produced by the Provincial Reconstruction Team in Helmand Province for international investment opportunities in Afghanistan.
For context, a Provincial Reconstruction Team, or PRT, is a unit introduced by the U.S. government and NATO allies in Afghanistan to stabilize the region. Their reports contain sensitive geopolitical, military, and economic data. And here you have a member of the royal family funneling that exact data to a convicted sex offender in New York.
This isn't just about moral failings anymore. This is about the compromise of a state actor. And the consequences of these documents becoming public were absolute. Based on the 2026 data release, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was officially arrested in the UK in February 2026 on suspicion of misconduct in public office.
It was an absolutely historic moment. He was the first senior British royal arrested in nearly 400 years, all because the digital paper trail finally caught up with him.
But incredibly, Andrew wasn't the only European leader acting as an intermediary for Epstein. Let's look at Thorbjørn Jagland, the former Prime Minister of Norway, and Peter Mandelson, a major UK political figure and former cabinet minister.
The data on Jagland is almost unbelievable. We are looking at communications data from 2013. Epstein essentially directed Jagland, who was a former prime minister and deeply connected in European diplomacy, to act as his personal errand boy to the Russian government.
The emails read like a bad spy novel. In May 2013, Epstein emails Jagland, explicitly telling him to relay a message to Russian President Vladimir Putin. Epstein proposes, quote, a new form of money on a worldwide basis. He claims this will help Russia leapfrog the global community by reinventing the financial system.
And look at the leverage Epstein tries to use in the email. He instructs Jagland to tell Putin, you and I are close, and that I advise Gates. He then demands that Jagland secure a meeting for him with Putin for a minimum of 2 to 3 hours. And the audacity didn't stop there. In 2018, emails show Epstein pushing Jagland to get him access to Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister.
Why would a former prime minister of Norway comply with this guy?
Because of the logistics of their friendship. The data shows that Jagland and his wife enjoyed the immense perks of Epstein's wealth. They stayed at Epstein's lavish Paris apartment in May 2012. In 2014, Epstein's staff arranged for Jagland's family to visit Little St. James, coordinating their private flights through the First Lady of the U.S. Virgin Islands.
Jagland was completely immersed in the lifestyle. He even sent emails to Epstein complaining about his wife's 60th birthday, saying, I can't keep it going only with young women, as you know, and boasting about meeting extraordinary girls in Albania.
The fallout in Europe was massive. Following the 2026 data release, Norwegian police launched a formal investigation. Jagland was charged with gross corruption regarding the gifts, travel, and loans he may have received from Epstein while serving on the highly prestigious Norwegian Nobel Committee.
Then you have Peter Mandelson in the UK. Mandelson was arrested by London police in February 2026 for misconduct in public office. And the reason why is terrifying from an intelligence perspective. The documents revealed he was leaking market-sensitive and highly secret information from the absolute heart of the UK government directly to Epstein.
He was forwarding Downing Street emails to a man in a Manhattan townhouse. In one August 2009 email, Mandelson appeared to reveal Prime Minister Gordon Brown's highly secure secret email address and his operational pseudonym, which was John Pond. Mandelson also leaked highly sensitive plans for a massive EU financial bailout.
Mandelson was essentially using Epstein as a shadow advisor, compromising the British government's economic security in the process. It demonstrates how Epstein leveraged his vast, unexplained wealth to become an intelligence nexus. He had former prime ministers pitching financial schemes to Putin, and UK lords funneling him classified state secrets.
But Epstein knew that politicians are ultimately transient. They lose elections. To truly insulate himself, he needed to collect intellectuals to legitimize his reputation. Which brings us to the academics in the files, Noam Chomsky and Dean Kamen.
Noam Chomsky is arguably one of the most famous academics and linguists in the world. When rumors of his ties to Epstein first surfaced years ago, Chomsky played defense. He publicly claimed their relationship was strictly about financial and advisory dealings. He tried to brush it off as a mundane business relationship.
But the OSINT matrix from the 2026 files tells a completely different story. The emails reveal a deep personal friendship that continued long after Epstein's conviction. In late February 2019, just months before Epstein's death, the files show Epstein telling an associate that he had just received advice from Chomsky on how to navigate, quote, the horrible way you were being treated in the press and public.
A world-renowned intellectual giving PR advice to a sex trafficker. And the intimacy goes further. The data shows Epstein's girlfriend arranging to send Noam Chomsky and his wife, Valeria, genetic testing kits from 23andMe in 2017.
And the emails show them actively planning social dinners. At one point, Chomsky emails Epstein writing about, quote, fantasizing about the Caribbean. Epstein casually replies, come to New York or Caribbean, enjoy the food. Chomsky also utilized Epstein's network for political access, using him to get an introduction to Donald Trump's strategist, Steve Bannon, writing to Bannon. Lots to talk about.
It completely shatters Chomsky's defense. You do not get crisis PR advice, share your DNA via genetic testing kits, and fantasize about Caribbean vacations with someone who is just a dry financial advisor. The relationship was highly intimate and reciprocal. And we see the exact same pattern of denial and data with Dean Kamen, the famous inventor of the Segway.
Kamen tried to play the exact same PR game. When photos of him and Epstein surfaced, Kamen aggressively stressed that his dealings with the convicted traffickers were very limited. So, as analysts, we run the logistics data on Kamen.
The documents from 2011 to 2014 show shared travel, favors, and deep, synchronized coordination. In April 2013, emails show Kamen coordinating complex travel to the Caribbean using his own private plane. He was flying down to visit the billionaire Richard Branson on Branson's private island, and then coordinating a helicopter transfer to Epstein's island, Little St. James.
The overlapping billionaire networks are incredible. And look at the email Branson sent Epstein in 2013 to coordinate this. Branson wrote, anytime you're in the area, would love to see you, as long as you bring your harem.
Bring your harem. It was an open joke among the elite. And Kamen, after his visit to Epstein's island, emailed Epstein on April 20, 2013, saying, firstly, let me thank you for hosting an incredible visit to a magical place. It really is almost unbelievable. The archives also contain emails from Epstein's assistant referencing Kamen flying the girls to Palm Beach from New York.
Limited dealings do not involve flying your private plane with the girls to Palm Beach or sending effusive thank you notes for magical island visits. The data matrix forces these revered, untouchable intellectuals to face the reality of their complicity. They lent their immense academic and societal prestige to a monster, and the time-stamped emails prove that they fully enjoyed the luxurious perks of that association.
It is a brutal reality check. And this brings us to Section 4 of our deep dive. We have spent a lot of time identifying the who in this network, the presidents, the billionaires, the royals, the academics, but we need to shift our focus to the how, because an operation of this magnitude doesn't just spontaneously happen. We need to look at the physical and financial infrastructure of this trafficking ring, the pure logistics of exploitation.
You are absolutely right. To move this many people around the globe, to compromise this many leaders, requires a massive corporate infrastructure. It requires aviation fleets, massive payrolls, and incredibly strict operational directives for the staff. Let's analyze the aviation fleet first, because it is staggering.
We mentioned the Boeing 727-100 earlier, but the DOJ files detail a much, much larger fleet. Epstein also owned a Gulfstream G550, which is a massive, ultra-long-range business jet. He owned a twin-engine Cessna 421 and multiple private helicopters.
The flight data released by the government shows this fleet was logging over 600 flying hours a year. To put that in perspective, that is an astonishing amount of airtime. He was practically operating a private, unregulated airline, shuttling individuals continuously across the globe to his properties in New York, Palm Beach, Paris, New Mexico, and the Virgin Islands.
But to maintain massive estates in all of those locations, you need a highly compliant, well-paid staff. And the FBI staff interviews released in the 2026 files break down a horrific, normalized daily routine. This wasn't a dark secret kept from the housekeepers and butlers. Managing the abuse was their daily job.
The banality of evil detailed in these FBI 302 forms is deeply unsettling. Staff members told the FBI they were explicitly instructed to leave $100 bills on the table by Epstein's bed. They were tasked with hiding firearms between the mattresses in his bedroom for his personal security.
They were responsible for cleaning up the aftermath of what were euphemistically called massages, which explicitly included the disposal of used condoms. In one profoundly disturbing incident detailed in the files, staff were ordered to deliver flowers to a high school student in Royal Palm Beach right after her school play in 2007.
Let's just pause on that. A billionaire is sending his adult staff to a high school play to deliver flowers to a teenager. It illustrates the complete brazen institutionalization of the abuse. The staff knew exactly what was happening, but they were paid exceptionally well to look the other way, clean the rooms, and manage the logistics.
And that complicity was actually captured on tape. This leads us to one of the most remarkable pieces of physical evidence in the entire DOJ release, the 2009 undercover sting operation video.
This is an incredible piece of intelligence. The DOJ archive includes a 46-minute video recorded by the FBI on November 3, 2009. The FBI set up a sting operation in a hotel room in Boca Raton, Florida. An undercover agent met with a man named Alfredo Rodriguez, who was Jeffrey Epstein's longtime butler.
Why was the butler meeting with the FBI?
Because Rodriguez was attempting to sell Epstein's infamous little black book to the undercover agent, believing the agent was a buyer.
The video is just a raw, unfiltered look into the blackmail economy. You watch the FBI agent show Rodriguez a bag full of cash. Rodriguez pulls the book out of an envelope, proudly calling it the real McCoy. He starts pointing out the names and numbers of the girls who provided massages. He tells the agent that Epstein kept copies of this book in his cars and planes, but made them disappear when the heat came down, and that Rodriguez had secretly kept his own copy.
In the video, Rodriguez openly admits that the household staff knew exactly what was going on but looked the other way for the money. But then, trying to prove the value of the book to the buyer, he starts naming names to the undercover agent. He claims Ghislaine Maxwell went to Eastern Europe specifically to procure girls. He claims former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak flew with girls on the plane, telling the agent, quote, "You can bring this guy down in like no time."
It's pure extortion. He also implicates highly prominent figures who were physically present at the houses. He notes that the famous attorney Alan Dershowitz, who famously helped negotiate Epstein's incredibly lenient 2008 plea deal, was at the home several times.
According to Rodriguez in the video, Dershowitz usually stayed outside having wine by the pool and didn't go upstairs where the, quote, hanky-panky happened. But Rodriguez explicitly noted to the agent that young girls were often topless or naked right there by the pool while Dershowitz was present.
Rodriguez also names the famous magician David Copperfield, saying he came to the house to perform tricks for the girls. And he names former Senate Majority Leader George Mitchell, claiming the senator was there every day asking Epstein for donations. The video ends abruptly when the FBI agent hands Rodriguez the bag of cash and tells him to count it. Rodriguez was subsequently arrested right there in the hotel room for obstruction of justice.
What this video proves, beyond a shadow of a doubt, is that the leverage Epstein held was tangible, physical, and highly lucrative. His own butler knew that selling this book was worth a fortune because of the explosive, compromising power of the names inside it.
But the final piece of the logistics puzzle released in 2026 elevates this entire story. It moves it from a localized, horrifying sex trafficking ring for wealthy friends into something much, much larger. We had to look at the DEA investigation.
This is the document that fundamentally shifts our historical understanding of Jeffrey Epstein. The DOJ released a heavily redacted 69-page document marked law enforcement sensitive, dated December 17, 2010. It reveals a previously undisclosed 5-year-plus investigation by the Drug Enforcement Administration targeting Jeffrey Epstein and 14 other unnamed individuals.
And as an analyst, when you see the DEA involved, alarm bells go off. The DEA does not investigate local prostitution rings in Palm Beach. They investigate illicit drugs and massive transnational cartels.
Exactly. This memo was a formal request sent to an Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force's Fusion Center. A Fusion Center is a multi-agency intelligence hub designed to pool resources from the FBI, DEA, and Treasury to take down sophisticated multinational criminal syndicates.
What did the memo actually say?
The DEA memo explicitly states, quote, DEA reporting indicates the above individuals are involved in illegitimate wire transfers, which are tied to illicit drug and four-door prostitution activities occurring in the U.S. Virgin Islands and New York City.
Illegitimate wire transfers tied to illicit drugs. This is a massive revelation. It proves they were tracking suspicious money transfers, indicating money laundering on a scale that required a federal organized crime fusion center to unravel. Epstein was moving staggering amounts of illicit capital across international borders.
It reframes Epstein entirely. He wasn't just a disgraced financier with a dark secret. He was operating a sophisticated criminal enterprise that intersected with drug cartels, global money laundering, and international intelligence gathering. The human trafficking was the mechanism of control and leverage, but the financial syndicate was the engine that powered the entire operation.
So, we have covered an immense amount of ground today. We have sifted through 1990s flight logs, White House visitor records, server timestamps, signed LLC contracts, and highly sensitive FBI and DEA memos. We've looked at Bill Clinton's missing Secret Service details, Donald Trump's 1990s flight manifests, Howard Lutnick's AdFen contract, Elon Musk's party emails, Prince Andrew's leaked state secrets, and the DEA's money laundering probe. How do we synthesize all of this?
The ultimate synthesis of this data release is the absolute spectacular collapse of public relations. For years, these incredibly powerful men stood behind podiums or had their spokespeople type out highly polished statements claiming they barely knew Epstein. They claimed they cut ties with him, that they spent zero time with him, or that their relationship was purely a boring financial advisory role.
But the PR spin completely disintegrates when it's confronted with raw assent data. A tweet saying, "I refuse to go to the island," means absolutely nothing when a recovered server email shows you asking, "When is the wildest party?" A Commerce Department statement saying, "I cut ties in 2005, is obliterated by a signed corporate contract and a Christmas Eve island visit from December 2012.
This is why you, as a listener and a consumer of information, must care about this deep dive. We live in an era of intense information overload and institutional gaslighting. You are constantly told what to believe by spokespeople, political operatives, and media narratives. But critical thinking and a relentless demand for primary, raw data are your best defenses against that manipulation.
Exactly. You don't have to accept the narrative they hand you. You can look for the flight manifest, you can demand to see the waived logs, you can look at the contract signature, because the data doesn't lie, even when the people involved in it do.
The 2026 Epstein Files Transparency Act release gave us 3.5 million pages of truth that powerful people spent millions of dollars trying to keep hidden. It shows us with undeniable clarity how global statecraft, Wall Street finance, and technological power were all compromised by a single illicit network of blackmail.
But as we close this deep dive, there's one final provocative thought I want to leave you with, something to really mull over as you digest everything we talked about today. The Department of Justice published 3.5 million pages. It feels like an overwhelming amount of information. But in their own communications with Congress, the DOJ admitted that up to 6 million pages might actually qualify under the Transparency Act.
Which means the government deliberately held back 2.5 million pages of data.
2.5 million pages. Think about the staggering global corruption, the leaked state secrets, the massive money laundering operations, and the undeniable complicity of former presidents and billionaires that we just discussed today. That is what they allowed us to see. What on earth is hidden in the 2.5 million pages they are still fighting to keep in the dark?
It's a chilling question, and it means this investigation is far from over.
It certainly is. Keep questioning the narrative, keep looking for the raw data, and we will see you on the next deep dive.
Bill Clinton. Between 17 and 21 visits to the White House were recorded from 93 to 95, organized by aide Mark Middleton. He flew on the Lolita Express 26 times between 2002 and 2003. In at least 5 flights, the Secret Service was completely absent, which is a gross violation of protocol. A 2003 Hong Kong photo was found in the archive featuring him with Epstein and Mick Jagger, along with a personal note in a book for Epstein's 50th birthday, where Clinton praises him for his boyish curiosity. Donald Trump. He flew on Epstein's plane at least 8 times in the mid-90s. One flight in 93 consisted only of Trump and Epstein himself. Despite attempts to distance himself in 2006, logs confirm their close physical proximity in the 90s. The files also contain an unconfirmed claim from an alleged victim regarding ritual sacrifices on a yacht, but the FBI found no evidence for this.